Imagine was part of a very cool project with CTG, launching a brand new arena for the Milwaukee Bucks that is just damn impressive. So you guys will hear about it. And Ed, Cassidy, take it away.
Ed Pittenger, CTG. I'm the Director of Engineering.
And I'm Cassidy Phillips. I'm a solutions architect with Imagine, which is really like a design engineer or a pre-sales engineer. And so I worked from the beginning with the team at CTG on this design. The network was selected first, and then the devices were slowly put together. And it is a mixed vendor system that we were designing in late 2017. So what that means is this was all bleeding edge, and a lot of it was just an idea. So this was the original design from late 2017. So you can see I have SDI Edges. That's what we thought we would have. We would have an IP COTS core. We knew we wanted an Arista core, and we were going to use our Selenium network processor to gate these SDI devices, such as cameras or a replay system or a production switcher. And what we found over the course of the design process, and then some of it even after things had been ordered and were starting to ship, was that people were going to give us 2110. So we actually got 2110 directly from the CCUs, and you can see they went straight into the Arista core. So that's one of the things that I wanted to highlight on this drawing as well, is this is true 2110 mixed vendor interop. So we're not going through some sort of a conditioning device to take the 2110 from the CCU and make it acceptable to the core, or do anything to make it acceptable for an edge device. We're actually putting it directly into the COTS core. And another interesting thing about this drawing is this is a super high level logical drawing. You can see I have the arrows for bidirectional connections. Ed, what are you guys doing for a baseband reference system?
Well, we use the Tektronix signal generators, and we did, obviously PTP played a big role, but we had, you can't, just like the guys with the trucks were saying, you can't get away from baseband and tri-level, so we also took that out. But in the one of the nice features of the Selenium network processors is they actually give you a reference out. So if you're out there at that edge device, you don't have to run, black burst all the way from a DA, excuse me, to that device. You can take it right out of the SMP. And
so it's actually in-band PTP. So what you're seeing here in this logical diagram is actually kind of close to the physical cabling, in a sense, that you have reference and video going in both directions to the core or to the edges. And essentially what that means by having it with the gateway like that is your short runs of coax from an SDI device, or maybe your SMPTE cable to fiber, then going to coax. Eventually that baseband goes into this gateway, and that same length of connectivity is going to be used to get the reference back to that device that needs baseband reference. So it's an interesting way to leverage the technology. I could see systems where you still need to have that black burst as a separate system if there are enough SDI edges, but in this case we didn't have to do that.
Yep.
So again, this is a mixed vendor system. So we actually had Grass Valley CCUs. We have the EVS XT4K, and the ROS production switcher remained SDI. So we wrapped that in gateway. And the multiviewer is also IP native. And then you can see I have the arrow to the processor that is only green. Why do you want to process things that are IP, pure IP? Well, you're still going to have issues like a separate audio system from your video system, and maybe the PTP timestamp on the microphone in the, say, radio announce booth is not exactly the same as the PTP timestamp on the video that you want to lip sync that with. So, for lack of a better technical description, I think giving you the handles to make a creative decision as an operator as to when this looks right or sounds right is still going to be there for years to come. So talk about the core, because I think it's one of the cool things about the IP technology. So these are 7RU 4-slot Arista switches. And I actually just went real high level here. Just the 100 gig blade, if signals were properly aggregated to it, gets you over 1,200 by 1,200 3G signals. And they have open slots available for future expansion. So, and this is a 3G system as it's operating today. It's 1080p 60.
That's correct.
So if all slots were populated and everything was aggregated together tightly, you could actually support a 4,800 by 4,800 1080p 60 3G matrix. And again, that's in one 7RU. And the reason why they have two is so that they could do a dual network A and B if they decide to implement that for a particularly special event that is not two routers serving the same live matrix. So, and that, go ahead, Ed, a little bit, talk about the issue with the -7 support at this point.
Yeah, not everybody has -7 at this point. So, originally coming into it, we were hoping that we were going to be able to set up a complete -7 switch with the two Aristas. But what we basically have ended up doing is making it so it's a hot spare for the engineer at the facility, so that once we do get everything -7 capable, then he'll be able to do it. But right now, he would just have to pull out a couple of the twin-axis FPs and just move them down.
Yeah. So that's a lot of horsepower in one rack, and that's not even all the other stuff I cropped out above it. So this one, I just want to point out, these are the back planes of the CCUs as well as the multiviewer. And what I'm trying to show here is we have a lot of BNCs there that are not connected. That is 2110 from the CCU to the multiviewer, or the CCU to whatever outgoing device from the system. So we didn't quite get from glass to glass in 2110, but we did pretty close. For when we were actually standing up in the pre-staging, Ed?
Yeah, we actually ended up terming it the Interop Atlanta. We did a complete build of this system in our shop before we ever rolled it out to Milwaukee, and yeah, it turned out to be one of the best things that we could have done for ourselves, because it. Getting the interoperability between, Imagine and EVS and Grass Valley, there at one point I felt more like a project manager than the engineering design person, because, there was a call that involved Tektronix engineers in Washington, Lee Whitcomb from Imagine in Texas, myself with several other people around the phone in Atlanta, and then Grass Valley engineers, in Belgium. And, just everybody came together and worked everything out. And we had that benefit of doing that early before we got on site. So when we rolled this out to site, I think it was like 3 months later. We started in January. In March, we took it to to Fiserv, and it wasn't even named at that point. They still didn't have a name for the arena, but we pretty much had a working system when we walked in there.
Yeah. You guys actually had the positions laid out, and we were doing dry runs of the production switcher functionalities, audio position, everything. We were really trying to do not just pre-configuring the racks, but actually operating the system. And that started in January 2018, right? And then
Correct.
we shipped in, April?
It was end of March, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And then when was the first live event?
First live event was middle of August.
Okay.
So it was
August 2018. And then we actually received one service call over the course of the entire season, and that was for a device that was found to have been damaged in shipment and had just not been saturated to a point or utilized to a point where they discovered the issue until I think it was preseason NBA. Mm-hmm. And so we RMA'd that, and that was it. We used to beg them to let us come hang out during games, and they told us they were good. They didn't need it. So how did you guys do with support?
It's amazing. The engineering staff up there is tip top. I mean, I don't know if I can say his name or not.
I'll say Ken Barsky.
Ken Barsky.
Yeah, he's one of my heroes.
They just took to the system like it was nothing at all. And one of the great things about the way the system flows, any of the operators, they have no idea they're sitting on top of a network, like like what they're sitting on. It just plays like a 3G baseband system to anybody sitting in the control room.
Yeah, it's still destination source take. It's not a data center behavior for them.
Right.
So these guys could potentially go operate an SDI system tomorrow and not necessarily think differently about it in terms of what their actual workflow is. So, that's pretty impressive all the way through the postseason. There's another thing to point out. So COTS, not just about the switches, right? We talk about utilizing servers. We're not the only ones at Imagine who are doing this, but this is our multi-viewer, and we use PCIe cards to change what the input types are from SDI to IP, but that's on an HPE server. So similar to the way that we look at those COTS switches as a big engine with a lot of horsepower that we can use, that's how we're looking at the servers and virtual machine concepts and data center concepts. So it allows us to leverage the R&D and the supply chain of the IT world, and then we can focus on operational workflows and performance. So the last thing here, this is actually that gateway device, and for me, this is still an interesting image. We have the 32 HD BNCs of 3G coming in here, and I see it. There's a couple there not populated. And then those little light blue cables are the 100 gig links, and I still just get a kick out of how small those links are for how much is happening. And, again, as everyone's talked about throughout the day, the way that you can aggregate the IP signals onto a fiber now, getting 32 into a couple fibers. If you're using something like a 10-kilometer link, you can do 2 strands of fiber, 32 3G signals bidirectionally. And the distance now without having to re-amplify. So whether it's a venue going to a truck or a truck going to another truck, or you have something like a truck dock that you want to put a gateway device at, IP is a really nice transport method, if nothing else. Completely aside from all the other cool things that we could get out of it in the future, right now, just the fiber optimization of it is really nice. So I'll kind of jump back here. We have a couple minutes, talk a little bit about some of the issues that came up in that pre-staging period, some of the things we worked out, which we've heard other people talk about throughout the day, but it wasn't so much the 2110 streams themselves, right? It was how did we get the devices to actually listen to each other for routing commands and precision timing protocol issues. So, and again, you guys being in that position of sort of, the project manager for a bunch of companies at the same time.
Right. Yeah. There were obviously issues with APIs. You got to control something. You want to do the make before break. A lot of the companies didn't really know how to do that at January 2018.
Yeah.
So we did some creative things, and we actually did some switching through a Selenium network processor, IP to IP, in order to get a nice clean switch into the EVS, so that we could have the operators be able to cut back and forth, between camera angles during a fast breaking, fast basketball can be really fast, so that you got to be able to cut the cameras fast. You can't be dealing with a long transition from one take to another. So, there was that, and there was some things, like everybody else has talked about with audio. Everybody doesn't have the same standard with how many channels of audio are in each essence. So.
Yeah, that was something we had to get creative about, and I know that the original design had called for mono channel per multicast, which would have been cool in some ways, and it's a small enough system that it wouldn't be unwieldy like something like this might be. But we had to sort of settle on a happy medium for all the devices in the system that could not do the mono per channel, and then condition those things in and out. And we used a Montone.42, I believe.
Yes.
Yep. So, I expect that type of workflow to continue for a while as well. I think it makes sense operationally to have a separate audio system the same way you might have a separate file transfer system. And, you're going to have a human sit there at an audio board and do that job. So it makes sense for there to be a little bit of separation.
Yep.
But again, the tie lines now are hundreds of gigs and bidirectional, and it's not like SDI. So it was a great learning experience for all of us. And,
We coined a phrase, fun-strating. It was fun and frustrating at the same time.
Fun-strating.
Yeah, very, very fun-strating, yeah. But
Yeah.
I like what Jeff said earlier, but I think it was Jeff, right? The mental sweat.
Mm-hmm.
You need, if you're going to do one of these systems, you can't do too much pre-planning. Get that spreadsheet out and start, assigning some addresses, because until NMOS, you got to do it. You just have to.
So thank you for your time. Thank you for listening.
Yep.